Welcome back. It's your boy Fresh.
And I'm Mary, and we are a Co-ople of nerds. And today we are going to be doing our
Elite 8.
Elite 8 for our board game March Madness.
Alright, and this time we got some visuals. We got the box lid. Since there's only 8, we thought we could add a little something.
So this round is Terraforming Mars versus
The
the Mind.
Mind. I don't know if we'll see that so small. Alright, so I figured with this round we'll do a little bit of positives and negatives for each game since there's not many of them. So what are the positives of Terraforming Mars?
It has a decent amount of complexity to it that adds to the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So the pieces to it are really nice. You get little chunks for you, like the gold.
Oh yeah, the cubes.
The cubes are
for the
there's
resources.
like gold and silver.
Gold, silver, and bronze.
Yeah.
They each mean, like 1, 5, and 10 or something.
Yeah, it's got really pretty pieces with it, and it's also I'm a fan of resource management games. So it's a resource management game. It's ranked highly on BoardGameGeek.com. I don't have a ton to say about the art. I don't think that the art is super fantastic with it.
I'll have to go back and check. It's been a little while since we played it. So I'll do the negatives. You can be the positive. I'll be the negative guy. So the negatives are the time. This is probably
60 minutes.
I would even say 90 minutes.
It says 90 to 120.
Yeah. And I think if you add players, that would just grow
because
exponentially.
we usually, I say 60 because it's usually the two of us. We can knock it out pretty fast. It also works by a victory point system, which I really like.
Alright, so up next is the Mind. So what are the positives of the Mind?
Does this work by victory point system? Or am I thinking... I'm thinking of Scythe.
No, it's got victory points.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember it's got that whole tracker around the edge?
Yeah, for some reason I don't know why I was thinking that was Scythe.
So Scythe has victory points as well. But
yeah.
It's got a little graph on the side.
It's got the different grids.
Yeah.
For depending on what you're saving up victory points for. So then there's the Mind. And the Mind is really a fun game for... of course you can play it with 2 people.
Yeah, on the box it says 2 to 4, but we played this with 6.
Yeah.
And it worked just fine. I mean, it's a really basic game.
It's kind of it'd be a good party game, which we used it as a party game.
Right. Yeah, some of the cons are, basically just 100 cards numbered 1 to 100, and then a couple of little special cards that let you do little special things, something like a life counter. So it's super simple to teach, but at the same time doesn't really have a whole lot of meat and complexity to it, so it gets a little...
Which versus Terraforming Mars is like on the opposite end of the spectrum, which there's so many different levels of complexity that you can have with that.
So which one do you got?
Definitely Terraforming Mars.
Yeah, I'm going to go Terraforming Mars too. The Mind is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's quick, it's handy, you can play it anywhere, but Terraforming Mars has a lot more meat to it.
It's a good game.
Yeah. Up next, we have Horrified versus Gloomhaven. I'm going to try to back that up. Look at the width of of this box.
It's a big box.
Look at those 2 lists. That is insane.
And it's heavy too.
Yeah.
With the game in it,
Yeah.
of course.
We just brought the lids out for the art. Probably can't even see me behind this box.
The art on that is very beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
It is awesome. Not to downplay the art in Horrified, because I do like the art in Horrified. It does seem like because Universal Monsters have been around for so long, everybody has their own take on the different Universal Monsters. And Horrified has, in its way, its own take. And I do like it. It is good, but it's really difficult to beat the art in Gloomhaven.
Yeah. Alright, so positives of Horrified.
Of course, it's got the IP, which you love, and it is cooperative. Well, they're both cooperative, so nothing against Gloomhaven, but it's a good cooperative game without being without being overly complex. I like that you can switch it up depending on what monsters you want to fight. So
And the number of monsters.
And the number of monsters that you fight. So you could make it more challenging for yourself. You could make it less challenging for yourself. You could, make it more interesting if you like certain monsters more than you like other monsters. And I'd say it has just about the right level of complexity.
Alright, negatives. So the monsters are miniatures. Are the characters aren't miniatures?
No, they're just the cardboard on the stand.
Yeah, so they're standees, and also the NPCs are also standees. So that's a negative. I wish they would have had all miniatures. So it does have that aspect of just really bad luck, where an NPC will spawn right next to a monster and just die immediately, and it's like there was nothing you were gonna do.
Yeah, and then your death counter goes up.
Fear is it fear counter, fear track?
Fear tracker.
Yeah, something like that. All right, so positives for the big boy.
I mean, it's an endless story. You could really just go on with it for forever, and it's always different. It's always
Can't go on
interesting.
forever.
Well, for us, it would be going on forever. Because the available time that we have left in our lives with our children means that we could probably play this game with the little amount that we have left and still never finish it. So, it is a very long story campaign. And of course, I like that it's cooperative. I love the art, and it is somewhat of a choose your own adventure, because there's parts of it where you get to pick. Okay, well, which way are you going to go? What decision are you going to make? And it can have a turn of events that either helps you out, which you don't know, or goes against you. So you might look at...
Yeah, there's like encounters in your travels that you got to pick.
Yeah,
it's a multiple choice, and you got to pick one. Sometimes
you might
it
think
helps,
that one's going to help you, and then it turns out it doesn't help you. So it could be tricky like that. So it's very, very complex, I think, in the sense that there's just so many different components to it.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into the negatives, and that's setup. This game, when we were going through it, one day we would set up, the next day we would play.
Have to set it up a day in advance.
That's a big time commitment. It says 30 minutes per player. That doesn't include setup and teardown. I mean, you got to think, if the box lid is this big, all the components, all the little
well, you have to
tokens
sort through them to find the components that you need for that campaign.
Yeah, so it's got, all these different monster types, which is great, but just setting it up is crazy. We'll probably not get through the story until both our kids are in, or all three of our kids are in school. Then I could see us kind of getting into the story, really. So set up and tear down is its biggest weaknesses because it's such a big game. So what do you got?
I mean, my vote is with Horrified. I like Horrified because we are able to play it more. I certainly like the IP. I like that it is, even though it's relatively complex, it's still simple enough to get through it and still have a good time without it being overbearing.
Yeah. I think Gloomhaven is my favorite game of all time, but life just doesn't allow for it. So I gotta go Horrified as well. Gloomhaven now sits on the shelf and waits for the youngsters to get a little bit older, so either they can join in with us, which would be awesome, or
Kind of like that Hero Quest.
yeah, kind of goes along the same lines of Hero Quest. So up next, got Pandemic versus Chronicles of Crime.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, these are two of
My
Mary's favorites.
absolute favorites.
Kind of like last round were two of my favorites going at it. So now it's your turn. All right, give me the positives of Pandemic.
Pandemic is just a really great game. It's fun and it's different every time that you play it, of course. The components are nice. Like, you've got the map and you've got the little cubes that represent the infection. I like the aspect of fighting on all the different lines, all the different fronts. And
Forefront War.
yeah, so
With
forefront
the four
war.
diseases.
And the replayability of it is just wonderful. So
Seems like a lot of games come down to, one or two key decision points or flips of cards
and Pandemic is also not a terribly long game. It says 45 minutes on the side. I think we could usually knock out a game in about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
30 to 45.
But we've played it a lot, so we're pretty used to setting it up.
Yeah.
And,
Setup can take a minute for this.
yeah. Not near as long as Gloomhaven. But,
Right. But it's not anything terrible.
Yeah. I'll say some of the negatives for me are it is a pretty lightweight game. I would consider this an intro game. If you've played like the Monopoly and Clue and like the old-timey classics, this is a new day classic. But the other side of that is it's not the most complex game ever. Your grandma can play Pandemic.
It could almost
and
be
get it.
like a gateway game for people.
Well, it is a gateway game.
It for people that aren't that don't play heavy games or aren't big board gamers, that are playing the Clues and the Monopolies, the easier, more popular games amongst people who just want to play a regular board game. Into Pandemic, it's that gateway into the
Right.
more complex board games that maybe the more, I guess...
Seasoned.
the seasoned ones.
Right. But with that comes an ease of play. And that can get a little, I love the game, but that can get a little, alright, I kind of itch for something more. And I think Pandemic Legacy gives us that.
Yeah.
Where it adds a little bit more to this. But it's still a great game. I still like it a lot. We still have a lot of fun with it. So give me the positives of Chronicles of Crime.
I just love Chronicles of Crime. It really does. So this is actually a game that, had we ever reviewed it, because one of the things is when we review games, it seems like we've never found a game that we can say much positive about the theme, where you're not really feeling the theme when you play it, but you feel the theme in this.
I think both games you can feel the
Yeah, definitely. I would say even more so with Chronicles of Crime, because when you're playing it, since you're playing it on the phone, you even have the option of hooking it up to a VR, where you look at the crime scene and you have to take clues from the crime scene. You only get so much time at the crime scene to gather clues, and it really makes you feel like you're there and like something bad actually happened there. And I feel like it really pulls you in really well. And so it's one of those games where the theme definitely plays through.
Right.
And I like that it does have different levels of complexity with, depending on, it's not necessarily a choose your own adventure, but you can take it a different way depending on who you ask questions from, what clues you pick up. Although you don't determine what crime took place. But I really like that. I like, and it's also, I would say it plays probably a little longer than Pandemic.
Yep.
And maybe about 60 minutes or longer. So it is somewhat of a longer game, but still not terribly long where it's dragging you down. I have fun the whole time I'm playing it. I have fun the whole time.
Right, yeah. Some of the negatives would be that, the game comes with a certain number of cases. Once you do those cases, you're sort of done.
Yeah.
But, since it's on your phone, it has an app that can consistently put out more and more cases, so you don't exactly run out. They've released some expansions, but the biggest negative is that each time you want to play a new case, you're out a couple bucks. And so that would be the biggest negative for me. So which one you got, Pumpkin?
I want to know your opinion first.
I'm going to go Chronicles of Crime. I think the story aspect of it is that's what separates the two. This one has a lot of theme, but so does Chronicles of Crime. But in addition, it has a good story.
Yeah.
We did the first case, and it was like, I won't get into some of the details, but you think it's sort of a classic murder case, and all of a sudden it brings in this whole other aspect, and you're like, whoa, I didn't see this. Now it's this evil corporation instead of just a
and
nutty killer.
You're connecting stories too, so you're connecting crimes. So this crime then therefore leads you onto this other crime that's taking place, which is really neat how the stories link together. So I'm also going to go Chronicles of Crime. That's a really, really tough one for me because we do play Pandemic a lot more. I feel like we're maybe a little more comfortable with Pandemic.
Yeah.
And Chronicles of Crime does take a little longer. So that's probably why we play it less, but I have a lot more. It's hard to say that I have that much more fun with Chronicles of Crime than I do with Pandemic because I have a ton of fun with Pandemic, but I do have a lot of fun with Chronicles of Crime.
All right. Last matchup in the Elite Eight. We have Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, versus Legendary Encounters, an alien deck building game. Alright, give me the positives of Deception, Murder in Hong Kong.
Deception Murder of Hong Kong is a good game for bigger groups of people. Well, 4 to 12 players, it says. So it's not something that you and I can play, just the two of us together. But it is fun in a bigger setting, and I like the mystery aspect of it. And it is, it's like solving a case, but it is different every time. So it is, it's got the replayability there. And that's about it.
Alright, so the negatives, the biggest negative you touched on is 4 to 12. We play with 2 people. So that'll be the biggest negative for me. It's a great party game. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a 2-player option. It wasn't designed to have a 2-player option, so it's probably my favorite party game, but we don't get to party that much. We got 3 dozen kids.
Each kid is worth a dozen.
Give me the positives of Legendary Encounters.
Well, I like all of the Legendary deck building games anyways. Legendary is what makes me like deck building games. And I really like that it's got different ways to play it. So you can play it where someone turns into an alien. You can play it where someone is the bad guy. So I like that it has variations on the way that you can play it. And of course it's got fantastic art from the movies. It's got the IP, which you really like. Yeah, I like that it's got just about the right level of complexity for a deck building game. Without being, it's not overly complex, but it's not too simple either, because some of the deck building games can get way too simple, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so the biggest complaint I have with it is that essentially it's the first 4 movies. So the story is kind of limited to 4. Now they come out and, you know, you still shuffle the deck, so it's not going to come out exactly the same each time, but essentially you're trying to accomplish the same 3 missions times the number of movies. Now you can mix them within the stories. Wouldn't make
It doesn't
sense.
line up right.
Yeah, so I haven't had any interest in mixing up the movies. I love the movies, so I didn't want to mix them up. But I think that's the biggest negative to it, is that it doesn't have the best replay value. So what's your pick? This one was tough for me.
This one was a little easier for me. I like Legendary Encounters.
Yeah, believe it or not, I'm going to go Legendary Encounters as well. So we agreed on all 4. How boring. Yeah, and it's mainly because Deception Murder in Hong Kong, you can't play 2 players.
Yeah.
Deception Murder in Hong Kong is a game I like more, but we can't play it near as often as I would like. Legendary, they have 2 different expansions now, and there's a conversion kit to mix it with the Legendary Predator. So you can play as predators fighting the aliens, which is a lot of fun. So they've beefed up the replayability a little bit more with that. Well, that'll do it. So tomorrow's video we're going to do the Final 4 and National Championship in one video. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye guys. Thanks.
Oh, to me game. Hey Pumpkin, it's the weekend.
Is it?
Doesn't really matter anymore.
No. It's hard to tell what day it is anymore.
Check. Make sure I didn't jack up the camera. No, it's still good.
Oh, so you ran into the table.
Well, because there's a big stack of boxes here. You run into the table without big stacks of boxes.
Because you moved it like an extra 2 feet that way. It was in my way.
Ready? Oh. Definitely not going to chug this in your face.
Little taste it.
Yeah.